Bernard Tomic. Bernard Tomic may be the poster boy for wasted potential and delusional confidence. He once was a junior prodigy, but then things took a turn, and he became known for tanking matches and being a professional drama magnet. He admitted to deliberately giving up and losing a match at Wimbledon 2017. The reason? Because he felt bored. He was beaten in straight sets by Misha Zverev. He even admitted to calling the trainer, despite not being injured, in order to disrupt the momentum of his opponent. The ITF then fined Tomic £11,600, a huge sum of his £35,000 earnings from the tournament. Tomic once said he didn't love the game and only played for money. The guy even joined a reality show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He's been involved in multiple nightclub fights and posted rants on Instagram, trashing other players and the ATP. In 2024 at the RD Open, an ATP challenger in the Dominican Republic, Tomic refused to shake hands after losing to Andres Andrade. Tomic showed up at the final between Andrade and his friend Damir Dokic in disguise. Wearing a cap and sunglasses, Tomic allegedly moved around the stadium to stay as close to Andrade as possible, heckling him throughout the match. When Andrade got into a dispute with the umpire, Tomic joined in from the stands. That was the final straw. After the first set, security was called, and Tomic was kicked out of the stadium. Even Nick Kyrgios couldn't help but laugh, calling it unreal stuff on X. Tomic isn't a villain, he's a walking cautionary tale with a big, I don't care attitude. But somehow, he keeps finding new ways to outdo himself. Jennifer Capriati. She was a tennis prodigy in free fall. At 14, she was an Olympic darling. But by 17, she was in a Florida mugshot. How did it happen? Shoplifting $15 rings because pressure felt heavier than gold. Her comeback story looked neat on paper though, and was one for the ages. 3 Grand Slams and the #1 ranking. Not bad, right? But retirement ripped off the bandage. Away from the crowd, she flipped. Painkillers became a habit, and she went into severe depression. In 1985, she overdosed, and the news dubbed this as a suicide attempt. It wasn't over for her just yet. In 2013, the cops picked her up again for assault and battery after a messy breakup. Charges were dropped, but the headlines screamed louder than any Williams sister forehand she'd ever faced. Today, all seems to be going well for her. She preaches mental health awareness on Instagram Live, but the glaze in her eyes still shows one question. How did it all go sideways? Her story isn't the cartoon psycho type. It's of the raw and unfiltered aftermath of teenage stardom. A reminder that the wildest rallies sometimes happen inside the skull. Pat Cash. Pat Cash was Australia's bandana wearing Wimbledon champion. But after his retirement, he turned into one of tennis's most unpredictable and controversial voices. Post-retirement, he's dabbled in everything from bizarre conspiracy theories to bizarre accusations against tennis institutions. He's publicly claimed that the COVID-19 pandemic was overblown, hinted at vaccine conspiracies, and labeled media outlets as part of a larger manipulation campaign. Cash even admitted to being violent, depressed, and hooked on cocaine. He said this was the reason why his marriage ended with the love of his life. He's become a kind of tennis shock jock, saying what no one else will, but often without a filter or factual backing. Bob Hewitt. Hewitt was golden in doubles, 15 majors, a Davis Cup, Hall of Fame bronze bust in Newport. But off the court, he preyed on the girls he coached. Yes, you heard it right. It had been going on for years, but no one had a clue. Decades later, some brave survivors decided to speak up against him. They showed graphic letters, threats, and assaults dating back to the 80s. South African prosecutor dragged the 75-year-old into the court. In 2015, Hewitt was found guilty on 2 rape charges and 1 sexual assault on minors. His total sentence? 6 years. The Hall of Fame turned into Hall of Shame. His sponsors vanished, and tennis collectively hit the delete button on him. Hewitt did appeal, though. He blamed it on faded memories, claimed frail health, but the judges were buying none of it. He ended up serving 3 years and got out on medical parole in 2020, but his name remains radioactive. It's the darkest corner of tennis history. His stories are now footnotes to unforgivable crimes, Whenever fans stroll the Hall of Fame grounds, they pass an empty pedestal. It's proof that some forehands echo forever, but for all the wrong reasons. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario. Arantxa Sanchez was once the pride of Spanish tennis. She has 4 Grand Slam singles titles to her name and had a reputation as a relentless fighter in her playing days. But retirement didn't go too well for her, as her life spiraled into courtroom drama and scandal. The former world number 1 was accused of hiding assets to avoid paying over €5 million in taxes. She was also given a suspended 2-year jail sentence for fraud. Sanchez Vicario, her ex-husband Josep Santacana, and 3 other people were convicted at a Barcelona criminal court of hiding assets. But in a shocking twist, Sanchez blamed her ex-husband for everything, claiming that he was the one handling all her money for decades and left her bankrupt. Imagine reaching the top of your sport, only to declare, years later, that you had no idea where your fortune went. And that's exactly what the court said, too. They said, even though she had no financial knowledge to carry out operations, she was fully aware of what was being done with her assets, and also about the debt she still had with the Bank of Luxembourg. Her public image was completely shattered after this incident. One moment she was the darling of Roland Garros. The next she was a disgraced fraudster with a prison sentence hanging over her head. Boris Becker. Now this one's a mix of both tragic and wild. Boris Becker was once the golden boy of tennis. He won Wimbledon at 17, but after retirement, he basically tried to speedrun a crime documentary. First up, he was facing a lot of tax issues. I mean, this guy owed millions. Then bankruptcy hit him. Then he started hiding assets. And then finally, in 2022, he was sentenced to prison in the UK. Actual jail time for hiding trophies, property, and cash to avoid paying debts. But it wasn't just about the money. Becker even allegedly tried to claim diplomatic immunity by becoming a sports ambassador for the Central African Republic. Marcelo Rios. Marcelo Rios had talent that made purists drool and a temper that made him dangerous. The Chilean became the first Latin American man to reach the world number 1 spot in tennis. But when it came to his behavior, it was anything but professional. He has a huge list of controversies to his name. One widely reported claim suggested he drove over his physical trainer in his Jeep, which caused him serious foot injuries. And he later fired that trainer too. He was also accused by his second wife of pushing her out of a moving car, with media outlets publishing images of her in a wheelchair with visible bruises. Rios strongly denied the allegations, attributing her injuries to a skiing accident. But it doesn't end with that. He was also arrested in Rome in 2001 after he punched a taxi driver on the nose and later had a fight with the police officer, who arrested him. The guy even allegedly urinated on some men in a bar's bathroom while training for his Davis Cup match in 2003. And how can I forget about his constant clashes with the media, umpires, and other tournament officials? He eventually retired early from tennis at the age of 27 because of a long-term injury. Now he lives reclusively and remains a mysterious and volatile figure in Chilean sports. Rios is an icon and a warning for the people around him at the same time. Ilie Nastase. Okay, Nastase's the guy your grandparents warned you about. A rock star with a tennis racket in the 70s. This guy was creating havoc before retirement. But after he said goodbye to the sport, oh boy, someone forgot to turn off his crazy switch. Nastase was supposed to be an ambassador of the game. Instead, he became the embarrassment of the game. In 2017, as Romania's Fed Cup captain, Nastase made racist remarks about Serena Williams' unborn baby, hit on the female British captain during a match, then launched into a profanity-laced tirade at officials, players, and journalists. He did it during the match and in front of children. Nastase was banned by the officials immediately, but unfortunately, that wasn't the end for him. He got caught twice driving without a license. One of those times he was even allegedly drunk and on a scooter. This guy turned his retirement into Grand Theft Auto, Bucharest edition. And when someone questions him about his behavior, he just shrugs and says something like, "I can't do anything about it. It's just my personality." Bro, personality doesn't get you escorted off the court like a WWE heel. Nastase's proof that sometimes retirement doesn't mellow you out. Instead, it gives you more time to just act insane. Damir Dokic. Where can I even start with Damir Dokic? He's been called one of the most violent, unhinged figures in tennis history, and all for the right reasons. He was banned from multiple tournaments after threatening staff, smashing phones, and screaming at officials. He once threw a piece of fish at a cafeteria worker at the US Open after complaining about paying $10 for it. Dokic was later banned from the tournament, but in 2009, he crossed the line into criminal insanity. Dokic was sentenced to 15 months in prison after he threatened the Australian ambassador to Serbia with a hand grenade and told him that he'll blow up his car. Who even does that? He was jailed for causing public danger, making terrorist threats, and for illegal possession of weapons. He did file an appeal, but it was upheld in September 2009. But after a further appeal, his sentence was reduced to 12 months, and he was released from jail in April 2010. Damir's behavior was so out of control that Jelena had to completely cut ties with her father to protect herself. This wasn't just bad parenting. It was a descent into pure madness. I don't even know how the people close to him survived and let his behavior go unnoticed. Roscoe Tanner. Tanner's left arm was a cannon, and his bank account was a sieve. But after his retirement, the 1979 Wimbledon finalist bounced more checks than tennis balls. Boats, cars, and even a solar panel scam. When the authorities started to get closer to him, he skipped a court date and fled to Germany under an alias. But the guy was extradited in 2005, and he spent nearly 2 years in prison, serving time for fraud and unpaid child support. When he was finally released, Tanner was completely broke. He got the idea of running kid clinics. It worked out for a while until the parents decided to Google him. It's not like he's disappeared now. He shows up these days pitching pickleball lessons, swearing to the world that he's a completely changed man now. But the cautionary moral lands harder than his 153 miles per hour serve. A booming delivery is totally useless when creditors are quicker at the net. Mary Pierce. Mary's bazooka forehand terrified opponents, but her real fight wasn't on the tennis court. It was across the net from her own father. Jim Pierce drilled teenage Mary like a Marine, hurled insults at her, and also allegedly slapped hitting partners. The WTA finally banned him in 1993. Can you guess what he did to get banned? He threatened to kill a player's dad. Mary Pierce soared on court. She had 2 Grand Slams and Fed Cup glory to her name, but retirement dragged her trauma back to life. She suffered panic attacks, was having trust issues, and estrangement haunted her 30s. Pierce found refuge in faith ministries, speaking about forgiveness while acknowledging scars that never completely disappear. Her psycho chapter belongs to her abuser, but her survival arc packs a bigger punch than any highlight reel. It's proof that you can escape the baseline of fear and still choose love over rage. Jeff Tarango. Jeff wasn't just a hothead. He was a full-blown tennis rebel. At Wimbledon, 1995, Tarango went into full meltdown mode. He was already having a bad day at the court as he heard all of the crowd chanting in support of his opponent. Clearly annoyed by the scenes, Tarango yelled, "Oh, shut up!" at the crowd. After the umpire gave him a code violation for this, he called him corrupt. But the madness didn't end there. Obviously, the umpire gave him another violation for verbal abuse. And with that came something that was almost unheard of at the time. Tarango threw the balls he had in his hand, picked up his bag, and left the court. Just like that. Craziness didn't stop there. After the match, his wife claimed she walked up to the umpire and slapped him on his face. That's not just drama. That's assault. According to the wife, the umpire deserved a lesson at some point. Tarango became the unofficial face of on-court madness after this, and over the years, he never quite managed to shed his chaotic energy. He ranted about corruption in tennis, made bizarre interviews, and clashed with other players and officials long after he retired. Tarango may not have broken any laws, but he did shatter the limits of sportsmanship. Mardy Fish. In 2012, primetime Arthur Ashe Stadium expected a night match thriller, but they didn't get their money's worth. Why? Because Mardy Fish locked himself in a locker room shower, his heartbeat was sprinting, and he was convinced that his time on this earth is about to end. The official reason? Cardiac arrhythmia. The real culprit of this was his panic disorder, which was so severe that he couldn't fly without grabbing a stranger's arm. Retirement came early for him, and then isolation followed. But then Fish did the unthinkable for macho sports culture. He came out and owned it. Netflix's Untold. Breaking Point turned his breakdown into a playbook for mental health transparency. He didn't face any arrests, didn't do any scams. It was just a mind-waging civil war for him. His story is a reminder for people that sometimes the psycho plot twist is silent, invisible, and happening 2 feet behind the baseline that no camera sees. Jelena Dokic. Jelena Dokic isn't the villain in this story. In fact, she's the survivor. She broke into the tennis elite as a teenager. She was just 16 when she defeated Martina Hingis at Wimbledon in 1999, but behind her astonishing career were darkness and nightmares. Her father, Damir Dokic, was physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive. He beat her with belts to the point of bleeding, pushed her against walls, and controlled her diet and every move. She later revealed that she lived in a state of constant fear, even while touring the world as a top-ranked athlete. She hid the abuse for years and years, fearing retaliation. One could only imagine the mental toll this kind of abuse had on her, and how she still continued to thrive on court. Her 2017 memoir exposed everything she went through. Jelena has since become a mental health advocate, trying to help others. But the trauma she had endured left scars that will stay there forever. Her story isn't psycho. Her father's is. Marat Safin. This guy's the hot-tempered heartthrob of tennis. He just might be the most lovable psycho in tennis history. On the surface, he had everything you could ask for. He had height, power, charisma, and a game that could demolish anyone. But his mental game? It was unhinged. The guy literally destroyed over 1,000 rackets during his career. Fans started showing up to his games to see how long his rackets would survive the abuse. In the 2004 French Open, he celebrated a particularly nifty shot by mooning the crowd. Yeah, you heard it right. He did that. The guy even defended his actions later by asking, "What's bad about it? Seriously?" People were starting to wonder what he would do if he ended up winning the tournament. And they were not wrong to worry about it. He once partied so hard after his 2000 US Open win that he showed up the next day at a press conference with almost no sleep at all. And it was clearly visible. He even admitted in interviews that he didn't care about legacy. He's just here to have fun. Marat Safin was less criminal and more self-destructive, but he embodied chaos in tennis like few ever have. A walking contradiction of brilliance and takedowns. Andre Agassi. Okay, so this one's a completely different level of psycho. Deeply introspective, almost philosophical, but still equally insane. Agassi revealed in his autobiography, Open, that he hated tennis for most of his career. Not just disliked it, hated it. He said playing tennis felt like he was trapped inside a prison, and he only kept on going because his dad forced him to. Things got even crazier after that, because then he confessed to using crystal meth during his playing days. Crystal meth. He lied to the ATP to cover it up. No suspensions, no headlines. Just a casual, "Yeah, I was high for a whole year." Agassi then vanished into philosophy, married Steffi Graf, and started a school. It's like the man went from drug-fueled burnout to being a motivational speaker overnight. His psycho energy isn't violent or loud. It's a quiet storm. The guy you think is zen until you read his story and realize he was one more loss away from disappearing into the desert and starting his own cult. Jimmy Connors. Jimmy didn't exactly go full psycho after retirement, but he went full bitter. Connors could have been a wise old sage after his retirement, but he became tennis's cranky old man who yells at clouds. His autobiography was basically 400 pages of "I was right and everyone else sucked." Then he launched a podcast where he roasts everyone from Nadal to the line judges. One week he's ranting about how underarm serves are too cowardly. The next he's saying modern tennis has become too soft. The players are weak and no one has balls anymore. Believe it or not, that's an actual quote. Connors also briefly coached Maria Sharapova. But that didn't last long, as he was fired after just one game. He even claimed that Novak Djokovic fakes injuries, and that Federer was too nice to dominate. Like, come on, is he just mad because no one uses wooden rackets anymore or what? Jimmy didn't go to jail, but but he turned his retirement into a never-ending roast session, with himself as the only audience. Nick Kyrgios. Now, he hasn't retired yet, but he's definitely a future psycho in waiting. You all know it's coming. And when it does, you better believe that we're about to witness peak psycho content. Kyrgios already acts like a guy in his third act. He skips Grand Slams, roasts players on Instagram, and plays poker instead of tennis. The guy even admitted that he doesn't like tennis that much. He said he could retire tomorrow and be fine with it. Now imagine what will happen when he actually retires. He'll either become a Twitch streamer who roasts Djokovic daily, or start an MMA league with Tomic. Either way, his psycho status is still pending, but it's obviously guaranteed. Martina Hingis. Martina Hingis was a tennis prodigy at one point, winning a slam at just 16 and dominating the sport in the late 90s. But her personal life spun into tabloid-worthy madness. At Wimbledon in 2007, she tested positive for cocaine and was handed a 2-year ban. She denied it and was suddenly forced to retire at the age of 27 to avoid a drawn-out scandal. But the madness didn't stop there. Her ex-husband accused Hingis and her mother of physically assaulting him. Thibaut Youton, the ex-husband, claimed Hingis, her mother, and her mother's partner, Mario Widmer, showed up at his apartment unannounced. Hingis and her mother allegedly hit him, while Widmer struck on his head with a DVD player. These allegations were shocking for someone who was once known as the Swiss Miss. Hingis never faced criminal charges, but her post-retirement behavior stunned the tennis world. It was like seeing a completely different face of Martina Hingis, which nobody knew existed. From teen icon to a scandal-plagued retiree, her transformation was as chaotic as it was tragic. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe to the channel, because I'll be posting a lot here. Until next time.